I don't really know how to start shows.
Come on now, don't start liking me now.
So yeah, I'm funny compared to, well, you'll see later. I stand for mayhem!
I know a lot of fucking idiots who think a lot of shit is mean-spirited just because it goes against what they believe.
But the relief of comedy is to take things that aren't funny and it allows us to laugh about them for an hour.
We got a purple suit to buy and a gigantic coffin.
Why are you laughing?
Evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Why You Laughing, a history of comedy podcast. And today, I am pleased to introduce to you the comedic stylings of Gallagher. That's right. The definitely legendary, definitely a name everyone knows. This Gallagher passed away recently, and it's strange because usually we're remembering someone fondly. Like I was a big Gilbert Gottfried fan, and so it was almost a sad episode to have to do when we talked about Gilbert. Gallagher, I was worried about because I was like, how am I going to spin this in like kind of a positive direction? And then the more I looked into him, I was just like, I don't think there is one. We just got to lean into it.
I was thinking too, like you always start the show, I'm pleased to introduce you to, like, how much did that hurt to say?
Well, I'm pleased to introduce you to a guy that died 2 weeks ago. but
this is for the clout.
Yeah. We have to start by saying one of the most successful guys of his era for sure.
Definitely.
Like legitimately a crazy success if you look at, what he was doing at that time. But also, his name kind of became a punchline and he was very bitter about that. And he would take that out on a lot of shows that he went on, which will be our main focus today. So we'll get into it. But first and foremost, if you like this program, if you want to support the show, listen, we don't get any ads. We don't have a sales team here. No one wants to support us, so we rely on you. So if you could go to Patreon, support us that way, we would greatly appreciate it. Or if you'd rather just support the show for free, you can do that on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and the easiest way to find all of those links would be blindmike.net. So go to blindmike.net, check that out, subscribe everywhere you can. Any way you can helps. So we appreciate whatever level you're able to support the program. And yeah, I mean, like this will be interesting because I think it'll be more like we haven't really done an episode like this. I guess the closest would be when we had Royce Lopez on and talked about celebrities attempting stand-up. But don't get it twisted. Gallagher was extremely successful. Like he found something. Yeah. That's what you have to say about guys like, whether it's guys like Gallagher and Carrot Top, who really get shit on too much, frankly. You know what I mean? Like, I don't find Gallagher particularly funny, but what he did attracted a ton of attention and entertained a lot of people. So say whatever you want about it. He found something and stuck to it. Now, his sticking to it gets a little weird based on some of his philosophies of comedy and everything. But no doubt about it, one of the most successful guys ever. He did all the talk shows, Carson and Ed Sullivan and Merv Griffin and all of that. Back in the day, all the, boxes you have to check to be a successful comedian, and then had, I think, 14 cable specials. And for a guy that you think of as like the watermelon smashing guy, putting out 14 hours of content is pretty impressive, Yeah,
you just get a new fruit every time. Smash it with a hammer.
well, that's the thing. That's the weird thing about Gallagher that we'll talk about a lot is he wasn't just that and so badly wanted to be more. Mm-hmm. But let's start earlier on. So he was on The Tonight Show a few times. He was only on with Johnny twice. He was on once where he brought out The Tonight Show home game, where like he had this, it was like a board game where they had a tiny Carson that adjusted his tie. I don't know. I'm sure it was a fun bit for 1975. But the clip that I took, I just enjoyed a little more. It's his second time with Johnny on The Tonight Show. So let's just get a glimpse of that. And this will give you a feel. If you don't know Gallagher at all, which if you're of a, my generation or younger, you probably know the name, but aren't too familiar with him. So this is a little bit of his material that he did on The Tonight Show.
Thank you. Thank you. How does he do it? Why does he do it? Ladies and gentlemen, so much for the fun. Presenting Gallagher's Suitcase Circus. All right, let's get down to business. Ladies and gentlemen, the amazing Master Tool Corporation, a subsidiary of Fly By Night Industries, has entrusted me to show you the handiest and the dandiest kitchen tool you've ever seen. And don't you want to know how it works? Yeah! Don't you want to know how it works? Yeah! Well, first you get out an ordinary apple. Then you place the apple easily between the patented pan. Then what do you do, gang? It's simple. You reach for the tool that is not a slicer, it's not a dicer, it's not a chopper and a hopper. What could it possibly be? Hey, the mystery is over. It is Sledge-O-Matic. Hey! Wasn't that quick and easy? Applesauce in an instant. Of a fine fruit salad. This, folks, is Sledge-O-Matic, the wonder tool of 1,000 uses. Now you make your own peanut butter right to home, fruit and vegetable juices, mounds of mashed potatoes. Why, Sledge-O-Matic will even make French fries. But I swear, you've got to crack that sucker just straight. Now, ladies, are you looking for a way to disguise leftovers? I'll tell you what you do. You root them around the patented pan. You guessed it. You hit them again. Chicken, look at you. Sledge-O-Matic will kill ants, roaches, flies, appetites, anything which crawls into the patented pan. Now, I know what some of you are saying. Sure, he can do it with an apple. Sure, he can do it with a potato. But can he do it with a watermelon? I may or may not have the watermelon. That depends upon your reaction to the rest of my show.
Yes, we're also going to make you wait. Contain your excitement, folks. So that's what he did. And this is where Gallagher becomes an interesting character. Because I was not aware, and you probably aren't either at home, unless you're of a very specific time, unless you were into, in the pop culture world in a very specific time, then you may not remember the Veg-O-Matic, which was like a blender for vegetables or something, a product that was on, infomercials and things in the 70s. So the Sledge-O-Matic is Gallagher's signature bit, and it was done to be, which I think we have a clip of him talking about this a little bit later, but it's done as a commentary on our, materialistic society that will just buy any dumb product. What's interesting about that is that he took what is commenting on, kind of our idiotic society and made it his closer to draw people in that specifically only want to see that and aren't interested in his high-minded takes on things. So it's a kind of a, hypocrisy within itself that I find very interesting. Also, he did the bit for so long that no one knew what the fuck the Veg-O-Matic was. They're like, this is just a guy smashing shit. He's smashing apples and watermelons.
And why is he talking like a carny?
Well, again, that's part of the thing where he's mocking, like, for our generation, Billy Mays, that kind of a guy. I don't know who it was in the 70s, but I'm sure they had their own. So it's a satire. It's commentary on that, as he, likes to pat himself on the back for a little bit. But it became not that when he started kind of catering his act to just closing with that,
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the tough thing for a lot of guys where, like, I saw, I don't know if I ever mentioned on the podcast, after we did the Ron White episode, people alerted me to the fact that Ron White was in the area. And last time he was coming to Boston before he retires. So I went and saw him. And Ron White does an hour. He does a full hour, none of the shit that you saw on Blue Collar or any of that. And then he will say, like, hey, are there any bits of mine you guys want to hear? And sometimes people will ask for tater salad. Sometimes people will ask for, like, the Plane story that we play. All kinds of different shit that he'll do. And he will close with that. So he's, like, kind of giving the people what they want there. But Gallagher, unfortunately, the one thing you wanted to see when you saw him was this watermelon smashing thing, and none of his other material took. So he had to make the decision, do I ditch that bit and just say, hey, this is where you're getting my political takes or whatever I want to do now, or do I want to keep selling out? and I don't mean selling out like his soul. I mean selling out shows, theaters that he was doing. So it's interesting.
Like actually huge.
Enormous. But here's the thing. When we do, whenever we do the episode about Carrot Top, that I'm sure we'll do eventually.
Definitely.
I will speak about him with a lot different tone, I think.
Me too.
Carrot Top accepts who he is.
And some of the things he does are actually like kind of funny.
Well, yeah, but not even that. Like you could, I haven't seen enough of Gallagher's acts, but you could say there's shit that he does that's funny. But Patrice told him he was funny. When we'll play some of that later. But
well, did he?
Well, we'll get into it in a bit. But the thing about Carrot Top is he accepted who he is.
Right.
He is the wacky prank guy. Whereas I don't think Gallagher ever quite accepted that. But first, I want to just show this because it might be my favorite clip that we have. Because Johnny Carson, notoriously, even though I guess he started as a magician, Johnny, I'm pretty sure. So maybe there's some self-loathing in here or something, but he hated prop acts. But, Johnny would give the people what they want once in a while. He knew entertainment at that time. So he would give in, and he had Carrot Top on a couple times. And this is the last time, I believe, Carrot Top was ever on with Johnny.
Gallagher.
I'm sorry, Carrot Top. Gallagher was on with Johnny. And
well, you have to point out too, the clip we just played, if you listen, the crowd is loving it.
Crowd's loving it. And he gets the call over to the couch, which is,
he did
highly coveted.
This was a pre-planned couch. If you watch, he just finishes, he smashes and walks directly to the couch. There's no.
Oh, all right. That changes things a little bit, but well, let's just play it and see. Tell me how you think Johnny reacts to this.
You got him awake.
Well, we woke him up.
Well, certainly, how you been?
Well, I've been good. I've been thinking and working and...
Is that a spring on one foot?
I have invented this for the show.
Yeah.
Watching, thinking about this gas crisis. I can beat most traffic off of the red light. I can beat everything up to half a block. They catch me at the next light, but I beat them again.
Yeah.
Pogo stick disco coming in?
You see, my dad owned a rink when I was a kid.
You skate pretty well.
Chevy Chase.
Well, and you would if your dad owned a rink. You come home and there's nothing to do but hand out skates and skate. So I decided to go one step beyond. You see, I've been into this skating for a long time now. So I decided you can't really go real fast down the street with two skates because every so often there's some obstruction,
Sure.
you see. So with this spring on one foot, I just fly over it. I just pick out whether I want to fly or roll.
Right.
Fly or roll. I think it'll be the next big thing. You see these furniture coasters? It works real good.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for coming by.
You two ought to get along famously.
Well, what if this catches on now and it's very practical? This is silly, isn't it? Wheels on your foot?
No, that was probably considered silly when somebody started that, right? They laughed and said, hey.
Well, at least I'm only looking half stupid. This half might be smart.
Okay, we'll take a break and we're going to come right back here.
I mean, Johnny is like an ultimate salesman. He would make his guests the star, and he couldn't come up with anything to say to that bit. He was just so disgusted.
Okay.
Okay, we'll be right back then.
Yeah, that's gotta be tough too, especially if you're Gallagher. He went from crushing to bombing miserably.
Yeah, and this is where I do feel bad for Gallagher because he became like kind of a clown where literally his name became a punchline for a hack comedian.
Right.
Like, oh, why don't you just be Gallagher and smash watermelons? That became a very commonly used punchline for a shitty comedian. And he really didn't want to be that. Like I said, where Carrot Top accepted it, Gallagher never quite did.
Right.
So next, are we going to his stand-up or are we at Letterman?
Letterman.
How do I want to do this? hey, you know what? Let's play Letterman if you guys aren't aware, so you understand why I'm talking about Gallagher with this tone. This is David Letterman, who, brings Gallagher on. He says, this is a friend of mine from the Comedy Store. Oh, and that's one thing I should say too, is Gallagher was around forever.
Yes.
He started at the Comedy Store. He was saying on, I listened to his episode of Maron, and he was talking about, remember how we talked about with Mitzi Shore that when the Comedy Store opened, it was like kind of an underground operation where I don't even know if they technically had a liquor license, and it was an open mic place, and Mitzi would work the door. Gallagher was there at that time. So he was literally there for the beginning of the Comedy Store. So he was around forever and, came up with the Pryor and Robin Williams and Letterman and all these people. And Letterman introduces him as a friend. I don't know how true that was because there's a few times where I've heard him shit on Letterman. And this seems like kind of the start of Gallagher's bitterness. Because to fully preface it, they're talking about him playing like 3,000 seat theaters. He says, I'll only do 3,000 seats, and the venue he's playing in New York, he says he's making an exception at 1,700 or something. So he's playing huge venues. This is Gallagher starting to get popular, and this is what he thinks of guys like Letterman.
No, I see on this cable deal, your shows, you have one about once a month, it seems like.
Well, I know it. You quit writing.
They're great. I did what?
Quit writing. You got to keep writing all of the time. You do a monologue every day. If you would put it all together, you'd have a tape.
Well,
But of course, I guess other people write it. What do you think?
I don't know what you're talking about. I have a show here. It's on 12:30 every night.
I know, but you give it to other people. Howard comes out and he wrote some jokes and lit a cigar. You know what I mean? Howard don't come out on my show.
No, but what I was going to say was what you do on that show, I think, is terrific. You're very entertaining.
Well, thanks. I'm trying real hard. I'm trying to see how you can use an hour. You see, I got to talk the whole time. I can't go, and now you're tired of me. Here's this guy.
Yeah. Well, no. Now Hey. These will be the people you'll be entertaining at Lincoln Center.
So, very weird shots at Letterman, and like maybe they're friends and the crowd just took it weird. Like maybe that's friendly ball busting. It didn't seem like it from Letterman's reaction.
No, Letterman was actually pissed.
Yeah, so what he's saying is a shitty thing, even if they are friends, because he's essentially saying Letterman is mailing it in and he's lazy.
Right.
Which is so opposite of true, especially at that time. Letterman was like innovating comedy. Like any weird, quirky shit that you see now is because of, particularly with talk shows, like Conan is directly because of what David Letterman was doing on that late night show.
Exactly.
So for Gallagher to come out and say you mail it in every day is A, very shitty if you're a friend, B, completely untrue, and C, hypocritical based on Gallagher's reputation.
Well, he comes across like a gigantic pompous ass.
Yes, it's bothersome to watch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it would be shitty if he was talking to an open micer like that.
Yeah, he's like, oh yeah, what do you think if you wrote again? What do you think? Like,
right, but you're talking to David Letterman, and you know what? If you took that shot at Letterman in 2012 and said, "Hey, maybe you should start writing again," all right, I'm on board with you. You know what I mean? Letterman started mailing it in at the end. This is Letterman at the height of his career.
No shit.
And Gallagher's like, you're a lazy hack. I assume he's talking about Howard Stern. I'm guessing Howard was the guest before him or the night before him.
I have no idea.
And he says, like, I don't need guests on my show. I can't just be like, hey, well, what you're saying is a different product.
He was insulting the medium.
Yeah, it's like if he was talking to, Tom Cruise and was like, oh, well, I don't need to pretend to be someone else.
Right. Exactly.
Well, that's not the thing that you're doing. What are you talking about? So that clip really annoyed me. I mean, A, because I love Letterman, but B, because it's like, dude, you're the guy. I get that's not what you want to be known for, and you're more than that and all that. You're the guy that smashes watermelons. People put on a poncho in the front row of your show. You are not this highbrow, prolific guy. Even if you put out a ton of content, if you had a ton of great content, that's terrific. That's not how people know you. And the balls to talk to David Letterman like that, I thought was, impressive in a way, but also very delusional.
Yeah, I don't.
But rest in peace,
I don't like a guy who makes like fruit stew talking down to me about anything ever.
And there's plenty of guys that their personality is that, but they're misunderstood. They're fucking around and they're misunderstood people. Maybe that's what Gallagher is. It did not come off that way, if that's the case. And we have a lot more evidence. If this was a trial, I think I'm swaying the jury with the rest of the evidence I have prepared.
Yeah, no, this is like they plead out before the case even starts.
So first, before we get into all that, we will play a little more of his stand-up, right?
Yeah, this is the political material.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a taste. And again, I'm giving you one or two jokes, so maybe not a fair measuring stick, but it's a little taste of his heady political material.
It seems like they're saying, let's redo the 60s, and it just ain't coming out right, is it? No. There was violence in the 60s when they shot the president. We didn't know who did it. Could have been the Russians, could have been the Cubans, could have been the CIA, the FBI, Johnson. But in the 80s, who was it? We know. Hinckley. All by himself in his motel. I think I'll shoot the president. It seems like these days we're just playing with life, like it really isn't so serious. Nobody believes they should do anything to him because he shot the president. Oh, he couldn't have been doing that. That's too serious. It's a good thing he didn't try and steal the president's car. He might have gone to jail.
That's not a bad line.
Yeah. You get what I'm saying? Right. This is a crazy time out here. Civil rights. They were so worried. We want equal opportunity to have a job. You got equal opportunity. There ain't no job. Then women's rights. Oh, gee, in the 60s it seemed so exciting. Surely it would happen. This is America. Majority rules. Women are in the majority. They'll vote themselves an amendment to the Constitution. In the 80s we find out what? No. They found out when they stood up for their rights, they lost their seat.
Yeah, so I mean, a couple okay lines. Well, here's the other thing: is we're not living in the 80s, so
Correct.
maybe that like there ain't no jobs line would have hit harder if we were in that time. You know what I mean? So I'm not even going to comment on whether or not you think it's funny. Just think about this. This is our compliment to Gallagher, or at least mine, I'll say, is that what I knew of Gallagher. Oh, I know him as the watermelon smashing guy. Would you ever have thought he was talking about assassinating the president and civil rights in his act?
No, I'd been like,
you know what I mean? Like there is something to the fact that like he had the balls to do that, to be this like, I guess family friendly or whatever he was that appealed to like a mass audience with the watermelon shit. He still had the balls to say, oh, I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about. I want to talk about women's rights and civil rights and Hinckley and all this stuff going on in the day. So that is, an interesting dichotomy.
Well, he can't go honestly to himself that, yeah, what I'm doing is going to change the world when it comes to smashing fruits.
Yeah. So here's my problem with Gallagher and his comedy philosophy, if you want to call it that. So the bit we just played you is from a special that he did. I want to say it's called Stuck in the 60s, Still Stuck in the 60s, I believe it's called, which I think he also sings the theme song for that, which I didn't care for. I thought about including it, but I restrained myself.
Stuck in the 60s. Stuck
in the 60s. So it's a theme show, much like, Ari Shaffir just put out about Judaism, or Colin Quinn has put out about the Constitution and other topics. This was kind of a theme show in that vein. And yet, this is how he ends that. We saw very political, very in-depth talk comparing the 60s to present day, which was the 80s. And then this is how he ends it.
Don't think that just because I haven't paid any attention to this little watermelon, is there anyone that particularly does not want me to smash this pig?
He just runs off stage.
Back on the rack is the mini
Subscribe to YouTube if you want to see exactly how that played out. But yeah, so that he ends with the watermelon bit. And he does the whole setup, Sledge-O-Matic. He smashes the apple, does all that stuff before. So you do this show about the 60s, and then you end it with that. Now, this is kind of what I talked about with Seinfeld. What annoys me about Seinfeld's philosophy on comedy, where he's like, you got to give the people what they want. You're putting on a show. And, you know, like Louis' argument and Chris Rock's argument when they were talking in that Talking Funny special on HBO, they were basically saying, well, this is your audience. You've built your audience. They want to see the thoughts that you have. They've seen the stuff you did in 1989. They want to see what's Jerry thinking about now. You know what I mean? Because it's your audience. That was probably a little harder to wrap your mind around in the 80s, to be fair, because you could have heard the name Gallagher for 5 years and still never have seen that watermelon bit. You know what I mean? Whereas now it's the internet. You would have seen that clip on Instagram 12 times. So, like, who gives a fuck now, you know? So it is a different time where it's like, oh, I've heard about this guy. I want to see the watermelon thing. But my argument to Gallagher, where he's still here, God rest his soul, I would say Leo. I would call him Leo by his first name. I'd say, Leo, it doesn't make sense that if you're doing a show about the 60s, you don't end with the watermelon thing. And then maybe that crowd is going to be annoyed and be like, fucking guy didn't do the watermelon thing. But now you're developing a reputation as the guy who used to do the watermelon thing. And you don't have to do it anymore. You know, that would be my argument to Gallagher, but he didn't see it that way. Which, listen, guy was extremely successful until he started playing the stock market. But he made a lot of money. So good for him. But that didn't seem to be enough for him, you know?
Well, his net worth isn't insane.
What is it?
200,000.
Was it? Oh, no. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so I heard, and when one of the times he was on Opie and Anthony and a few other radio shows that I listened to, every time Gallagher was on, they would say, like, he would sit there between breaks and just, like, play the stock market. Like, he would ask to use their computer and shit.
Right.
So I know he was really into the stock market, and I think he may have made a few bum investments.
Looks like he messed it up a little, because if you're, especially back then, you're doing 3,000 seats a night.
Yeah.
You're kind of rolling in it.
Yeah, I don't know how much money he squirreled away, but anyways, are we getting into Maron now?
We are at Bitter Gallagher with Maron, yep.
Yeah, so this is the bitterness that I'm talking about, and you saw it a little bit in that Letterman clip, but he did an episode of WTF with Mark Maron in 2011, and Maron does a whole setup. So before we listen to this, I should defend Maron, because I actually really disagree with Maron's argument. Maron gets into an argument with Gallagher here, and I would strongly disagree with a lot of what he was saying, but Maron did like an intro to this interview and said that he also kind of disagreed with it, that he reacted to an article that he read about Gallagher and should have given the guy a chance before kind of jumping down his throat. So Maron took some blame in this interaction, but I would place a lot of the blame on how Gallagher reacts as well. But this episode was recorded after an article came out, essentially calling Gallagher racist and homophobic based on jokes he was making. And this is, 2011, where we're starting to get in that kind of sensitive, politically correct time, certainly more than we were in the 80s. But anyways, let's hear a clip that shows us bitter Gallagher. So he keeps mentioning an inside track there, which makes it sound like conspiratorial.
It's predetermined.
You know what I mean? Like as if Jay Leno and David Letterman are, covert ops that the Illuminati has pegged as the successor to the Tonight Show. So it's definitely a bitterness there. It still certainly exists in comedy today, but I think because of podcasting and everything, there seems to be more of a community feel to comedy than there was in the 80s. Like back then there was a lot of bitterness, and when you heard guys in interviews or contexts that you weren't used to hearing them in off stage, it would drip off some of these guys. And Gallagher is probably the prime example of the, not sad clown, but angry, bitter clown kind of.
Oh, for sure. He's jealous of everyone. He's kind of like Maron. Maybe that's why they start fighting.
Yeah, so there's a couple things here where Maron's kind of going after him, and it's funny to hear him poke and be like, "Well, you're running around smashing watermelons. You don't have time for an interview." He is being kind of funny, but he also takes an approach that I don't totally agree with. But in Maron's defense, he never gets out of line, but he never says anything that you're like, oh, holy shit, he's really going after this guy. He's being an interviewer. He's pushing back on Gallagher. Right? Gallagher ends up taking it very personally, as Robert De Niro would say. But before we get into that, let's hear what and by the way, the other thing, he says about Letterman, he goes, well, they gave him a talk show in LA. It bombed horribly. And it's like, well, you're just not acknowledging that. Yeah, it was because he didn't work daytime. It didn't make any sense to have Letterman on at 10 a.m. or whenever he was on. They gave him a late night show, and it was historic. And he had a 30-year career doing that.
Terrible.
So you're just not acknowledging. You're saying, oh, he bombed horribly, as if nothing you've done has ever bombed, Gallagher. So it's a weird bitterness there that kind of annoys me, and he's not happy with. He says right at the very end of that clip, you hear him, it kind of gets cut off, but you hear him say, I'm into making money. So he's half this guy who's like an artist, has all this artistic integrity, and also the guy that smashes watermelons because the audience says dance,
They clapped. It's like jiggling your keys for a kid.
But let's see what Gallagher was up to prior to comedy. So you hear him kind of talk there. It gives no credentials that would suggest he could cure cancer, but he kind of talks with the attitude that he could.
He sure could. I believe it.
It's very. And listen, I have no idea what Gallagher's. He went to University of Southern Florida, I think, which I don't know what their science program was like or anything. So he might genuinely be a genius. I have no idea. But the problem is when he talks and says that he's a chemist that could have cured the energy crisis or cancer, he does come off like a guy you would see on the bus ranting about religion or something.
Yeah, I didn't
Jesus.
Yeah, I didn't pursue it because this lucrative comedy career got in the way of saving lives.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen. You smash a few watermelons, it can get in the way. I understand. But he never accepted who he was. He's not dissimilar from Stuttering John, who I feel like we'll talk about eventually on this program. I'm not sure when yet, but he's got this kind of I'm not a therapist, so I don't know if it qualifies as a God complex, but it feels like he thinks he could do anything. Like he could have done anything, and he graced us with his presence in the comedy world.
Well, thank God.
And that's the vibe that he has. And again, this is the in memoriam episode.
I was just going to say, I have to keep reminding myself that he passed.
So I feel bad going in on him as hard as we are. But listen, I watched a lot of interviews with the guy. He didn't give me a lot of reason to think otherwise.
No.
You know what I mean? Like the persona that he put out there didn't give me a ton of reason to think he was, this humble, respectful gentleman.
What's slowly starting to happen here in this interview is not a rare occurrence.
No, no, as we'll get to. But what's next on the docket here?
Homophobia.
Yeah, so like I said, Maron, Gallagher's people came to Maron and said, listen, there was this, hit piece or whatever you want to call it, calling Gallagher homophobic and racist based on a few jokes that he did just at a comedy club. And so this is an example of some of the quote homophobic things. And Maron really pushes back on him here, which we'll talk about a little bit too. So Maron's being a little shitty there, saying like, you're a racist audience. But listen, Maron's been pretty consistent on this. If you listen to his bizarre Instagram live streams now, when he's talking about Chappelle and Rogan, if anything, the guy's consistent because he still refers to, Chappelle's comedy and Rogan's comedy the same way that he's talking to Gallagher here. The main thing I don't agree with Maron on is the word attacking. You're attacking the homosexual community. And it's like, well, no, he's on stage telling jokes. And as far as I know, particularly based on that Siegfried and Roy joke, it's not particularly vicious. It doesn't seem like Gallagher is going on some crazy tirade about, gay marriage or anything like that. There seems to be no hate behind it, at least from what Gallagher said there. I was not in the audience, obviously. So I don't know exactly what people are referring to when they say homophobic. But I just think Maron's wrong to call it an attack, and he still does that today.
Yeah, he's not changed. He's like yelling at Gallagher for similarities, and he won't change.
Yeah, I mean he makes it a good interview because he's pushing back on him for sure. Like I like that Maron did that because he gets Gallagher to blow up basically. But it's shocking for me to hear a comedian say that you're attacking gay people by making jokes about them, and you're allowed to make jokes about straight white men, but not these other people, and saying it's a false equivalency or something like that. Like, that to me seems wrong because, you know, the soft bigotry of lower expectations or whatever they call it, where like you're now saying that, and where Gallagher is wrong in that clip is when he says some people in our society can't be joked about. And I would push back on that and say it's usually not gay people complaining about gay jokes. It's some, you know, generally white woman in the audience who thinks she's standing up for civil rights, you know?
Exactly. And it's friggin' annoying. If they're upset, let them be upset, and then you can go off of that. Don't assume how they're feeling.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't agree with Maron, but he's being a good interviewer. I think they're having a pretty good, interesting back and forth. It's weird that I'm listening to Gallagher be the voice of comedy. That's a little unusual, but I do agree with him. And it shows that he has, again, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. He understands artistic integrity, but does not display it. You know?
Yeah.
Like he gets, speaking his mind and saying what he wants his audience to hear, but also giving them what they want. You know, he tries to walk that line and does it very poorly, I think. But anyways.
R.I.P. Gallagher.
Yeah, rest in peace, Gallagher. A great man and a very successful career.
Now let's talk about his racism.
Now let's call him a racist. Let's dig him up and call him a filthy racist. What do you say?
I'm all for it.
Now listen, in late 2001, early 2002, I think you heard a lot of conversations like that. The problem is, I believe we had killed bin Laden at this point.
This was 2011, so if it didn't happen yet, it was just around the corner.
Yeah. So Gallagher complaining about that and blaming all Arabs does sound incredibly dated. As many hacks are, he's about 10 years late on that take. but
no, he's dead. Rest in peace.
But great man. God rest his soul. Now, where Maron is wrong is when he says, why make fun of them?
Right.
Well, the answer is you're a comedian. Very simple. That's why. Why make fun of anyone? Why make fun of Republicans, Mark? You know, why make fun of fucking anybody that you go after?
See, he focuses on making fun of Captain Beefheart, so...
I don't know who that is.
It's a band he made fun of it, or an obscure joke one time, but it was safe.
Oh, okay. Well, why go after them? But yeah, honestly, that's actually a good example. As much as I was about to trash you, that's a good example because it's like, well, why go after them? Those are individuals. You're not even being broad. You're attacking actual people. You know, so I think Gallagher certainly sounds like he comes from a different era there in his comments, but I get what I think he's trying to say. Although there may be, who knows, maybe there is hate in his heart, as we'll see in a later clip. But let's keep on this stretch. Are we at the end now?
This is one more. This is tension.
This is when we see the tension building a little bit between these two. He's right, actually. Maron is working his politics in there, but you can tell what really bugged him. And this is probably 20 minutes later in the interview, maybe 15. You can tell what really bugged him is when Maron kind of just often barely even noticeable to the listener, but to Gallagher, it was very noticeable when Maron said, you're running around smashing watermelons. That stuck with him when he goes, you're trying to pigeonhole me as the watermelon guy. And that, I think, is ultimately what made Gallagher the curmudgeon and the, temperamental sort that he was.
Because what you got to do too is like, if you asked anyone about Gallagher, not one person is saying anything other than watermelon smashing.
But yeah, I like his political take. Oh, I should mention he ran for governor in 2003. He got like 5,000 votes, governor of California, the same year Arnold Schwarzenegger won. He smoked everybody that year. Yeah, so Gallagher got about 5,000 votes. And as to your point, Craig, no one's like, oh, the gubernatorial candidate, Gallagher? Is that who you're referring to?
That's what I mean. Everyone thinks of that giant mallet.
Right. Yeah. So, like I said about Carrot Top accepted it. Gallagher did not. And all you have to do is do a show like Stuck in the 60s or whatever the fuck you want to do. And don't smash watermelons at the end. And then you can kind of be your own guy. You could say, hey, yeah, I smashed watermelons and then I also did this, like when fucking Adam Sandler does a drama, no one watches Uncut Gems and says, fuck you, you're not allowed to do this. It's him doing a different thing.
You stupid piece of shit.
Yeah. Now in Uncut Gems, if Adam Sandler worked in a toodly-doo voice like he does in his comedies, then people would shit on him for that and say, well, Jesus, you can't do anything else. Like you're able to separate things even when you're categorized in a certain way.
Shout out Hubie Halloween.
Yes, certainly. All right. So now this is the grand finale of his appearance on WTF.
Yep.
All right. Let's hear it. Maybe it really went well. So here's one thing. First of all, you can tell, again, the bitterness comes out when he's talking about comedians. And we've heard him shit on Letterman and say he doesn't respect the talk show format. Meanwhile, by the way, remember in I think the first clip we played, he's like, I would have done a talk show.
Yeah.
It's like, really? You would have done a talk show? Because you completely shit on probably the best to ever do it and his format. So who would think you would want to do a talk show?
For sure, one of the three best.
Yeah. So that's one thing. But we heard him shit on Letterman, and now he's essentially shitting on every comedian today, basically.
No shit.
And Pryor, Carlin, Kinnison. You're hearing him. Anyone who talked about their life, essentially, he is completely taking a shit on and saying, you're doing it wrong. I did it right, which is a bizarre stance to take. And also be the guy who wants to talk about politics and be known for your, brilliant satire that you're doing. You can't be both guys, and Gallagher never understood that. God rest his soul.
Doesn't seem like he understood much. R.I.P.
But isn't it a weird thing though? You know what I mean? Where you hear him say like, "Oh, these slovenly comedians," and meanwhile he's bashing Maron also. You know what I mean? Like good for Maron for sticking up for himself, because by saying like, "Oh, these slovenly comedians who hunch over and talk about themselves." Gee, does anyone in the room seem like that to you, Gallagher? Just say Mark if that's what you're talking about. But it's a complete difference of opinion, I guess. Meanwhile, to make his point, he quotes, Mort Saul or whatever he did there when he's like, "Oh, you go into a doctor's office and the guy complains to you." So good for Maron for calling him out on that.
He just kept calling him a hack throughout that whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. R.I.P., but it's true.
Yes. Yeah. What can you do?
Yeah.
He's in a better place. So that's Gallagher walking out on Maron, probably his most famous walkout. But there were others, and there were other contentious interviews. The interviews I found of Gallagher were either some ladies laughing along with him, like one of those type of shows, or contentious. Those are the two types of interviews he did. And Opie and Anthony's the next one, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So he was on Opie and Anthony with Patrice, and they had an interesting thing where, oddly enough, after we heard the slovenly clip, Gallagher comes in and looks a little slovenly. And Patrice is talking to him about, reinventing himself, cleaning himself up, maybe talking politics, maybe getting rid of the watermelon. God forbid.
You thought of that?
Yeah. So Patrice, who is, now a legendary comedian, but at the time, like a working comic who was pretty well respected, is kind of trying to help Gallagher out. And this is them talking about reinventing himself, right?
Yep.
All right, let's hear that.
Gallagher, do you think now obviously we look back in great fondness, remembering the Gallagher of yesteryear and the Showtime specials and everything, but don't you think there's a reason why there's 100 people at the club? And maybe that Patrice has kind of a good angle of the reinventing of Gallagher. And maybe, like you said, trim the hair, the mustache, a little goatee.
Do you really think if I did a radio show in Danbury and said I've cut my hair and I have a little bitty faggy mustache,
no, it's not going to be
that
overnight.
They're all going to get in line? What about the weather? Isn't a storm coming in?
Yeah.
Maybe there's 100 people because they have enough sense to stay home in a snowstorm.
You're rationalizing.
I'm not rationalizing. I've always sold my own tickets. I rent the theaters and I buy the advertising.
Oh, you do?
I've done it my whole life. I'm revolutionary. I'm an individual. I don't follow trends, fads, and fashion. I'm not going to wear a gold necklace.
No, he did.
On a T-shirt. You save enough money not buying a good shirt to buy gold.
No, he did.
Damn.
I'm not falling for this because I'm going to help this man.
I'm going to help this man. So, I mean, we are taking it a little out of context. This interview, or whatever you want to call it, ebbs and flows. There are moments where Gallagher kind of seems on board and is fucking around with them, and there's moments where he gets shitty. And there's also moments that are uncomfortable where he's like, Anthony says he sold 100 tickets. He's trying to sell tickets. And Gallagher's like, don't you think it could be the weather?
Yeah, naturally, because he's dead, we picked the ones where he comes off shitty.
I had no choice.
R.I.P.
People demanded the episode. So
rest in power, Gallagher.
Yes. Rest easy, old friend. But this is where, so Patrice is trying to help him. He's taking some of the shit that Gallagher's giving him. Gallagher's really looking down on Patrice and his ability as a comic. He also, by the way, later in the interview, I don't think I clipped it, but he gets into it with Anthony, where he's saying like, you guys aren't funny. You're like radio funny. And Anthony rarely gets offended, but like Anthony's genuinely funny. Like on Opie and Anthony, he was able to hang with those like top level comedians.
Yeah.
So he's genuinely funny. And like, it's a rare time where you see Anthony go like, fuck you, man. Like I've been doing this for a long time. I am funny. I do know what's funny. I'm not out fucking, smashing fruit to get a laugh, but like I have a pretty good grasp on what's funny. So Gallagher kind of has that attitude about him the whole interview. And this is Patrice, I believe, not standing for it anymore.
Yeah, this is Gallagher versus Patrice.
Yes.
That goes well for everyone that tries it.
Then nobody's Leo. You're a somebody, and we're going to get you back.
Leo?
I will not because Leo makes me look at him.
Leo.
He
doesn't want to be Leo.
He didn't want to be Leo at one point.
He still doesn't want to be Leo.
You're not my friend.
Oh no! I'm your best friend. You just don't know
you're
it.
not.
I'm a friend of your life. We don't know each other.
What other acts have you helped with your advice that have taken off?
A lot of young kids.
Yeah.
A lot of young kids have gone that way. I've talked to a few guys that don't give me credit for helping them get through.
Isn't the object of entertainment to have your own identity and your own look, and that way stand out from the crowd of guys that are wearing gold and have jeans on and are talking about...
No.
I don't talk about the difference between blacks and whites, and almost every black comedian, that's all they talk about. Do you talk about the difference between blacks and whites?
Absolutely I do.
Well,
I do it very differently.
Yeah, no, you don't. You have the same topics as everybody else.
Oh, shit.
Wait a minute. I understand this, Unis, but I'm sorry, Mr. Wheelchair Tiger Woods joke, that shitty joke you said. You don't think everybody's talking about that?
But I had a better joke. I had a good joke.
The standing up fucking...
Walking.
Are you fucking serious? That should have had knocking ahead of it. Because I don't have jokes, Leo. I have soliloquies. I talk about it in reality world.
So again, we're taking it out of context, and they get back like Patrice is having fun with him throughout the interview. Like it's not crazy contentious, but that right there was a moment where he was like, listen, fucking, just because hey, you see this apple? Like to call Patrice a hack is psychotic.
Oh yeah.
But that's the state of mind that Leo, and now I'm calling him Leo, that Gallagher got into, where you know what Gallagher's problem was when people started calling him racist and homophobic. I don't think I don't know. I don't know the man. I don't know that he's any of those things. But what I do know is that he absolutely discriminates against comedians, because he looked at Patrice and saw a black guy and said, well, obviously you do hack race material. When, as we played last week in Elephant in the Room, I mean, he's one of the most original guys that there is. And that there ever will be, probably. Like that's what Patrice is known for. And yet Gallagher just sees a stereotype. And that's, I think, what he saw with a lot of comedians. He didn't understand the nuance of, Chris Rock and Patrice and Chappelle being different than people you saw on Def Jam,
Right. Exactly. Also, I like that. Gallagher clearly doesn't know who Patrice is. If he thinks he's going to, big time anyone in that room, he's very sorely mistaken.
Outwit him. Yeah. And by the way, if it didn't make sense, what Patrice is referring to there is like jokes he made earlier in the show when he says it should have had knock knock in front of it. So it's like they came in and put up with Gallagher's cornball jokes. But then if you're going to call other people out, it's like, be ready to answer for that,
Yeah.
And this is just one more clip from that interview.
And people, we always talk about Opie and Anthony on this show. I feel or it comes up often. This is a perfect example of when Opie was great.
This is what Opie is necessary for. Yeah. Uncomfortable moments. But I will say, if you're interested in this part at all, it's like a 2-hour long segment from Opie and Anthony, and it's on YouTube. So feel free to go back and listen. Like I said, it's not contentious the whole way through, but there are moments where you're like, ooh, boy, like, they're trying to help Gallagher. They're doing their best for Gallagher, but he's not accepting much help. But this is a moment that only I feel like Jerry Sandusky could compete with the answer to this question.
All day long.
Gallagher, are you racist?
Why?
Holy shit. Why? Holy shit. He'd rather be fucking smashing a nigga's head with Sledge-O-Matic than a fucking watermelon. That's what a watermelon, it represents nigga head.
He desperately wants to be smashing eggplants.
My show. He wants to. If he could get a hold of some black babies, he's just.
What a hilarious. What? Not no. Why?
The way he says to why.
Why? What's your angle here? Are we going to be friends after this or no? But yeah, so go back and listen to that whole thing. Like I said, it gets weird at the end too with Anthony, where he's talking about that's again to go to that stereotyping people. I don't even know if it's about race or anything because he puts Anthony in this box of, well, you must be the same as the Grease Man or Soupy Sales, whereas like he couldn't be more different from those people. Todd Pettengill, another example. Name more examples, Mike. All right. So now we're going to probably his most uncomfortable interview that I could find, right?
Oh, Calta?
Yeah. So Mike Calta, if you're not familiar, formerly known as Cowhead in the Tampa Bay area, is kind of the last guy on terrestrial radio that I hear comedians mention in the way of like, oh, I'm excited to go on his show. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just some morning zoo, Wikipedia question type thing. That like it's more of a hang like O&A and Stern used to be. I don't know. I've never listened to his show. I've heard he does a show with Robert Kelly, and I've heard of that a little bit. I don't know if Calta's necessarily a guy that like I would listen to if I was in Tampa, but he at least like, has the respect of comedians that come in and everything. So Gallagher goes in there to promote his dates. He's in the Tampa area. And, they bullshit a little bit about, like I said, he went to school down there. So they bullshit a little bit about, geographical Tampa talk. And then they get into this. Mike Calta is giving him like an official introduction.
Gallagher is here with us. I believe you've been on the show, man.
He's on for maybe 3 minutes before this.
Oh, you have once before. And it was, we had a phone connection. It was a horrible phone connection. We started talking about, I told you that for years when your specials came out, I had believed as I was a kid that you were Eddie Haskell from Leave It to Beaver. Did that ever get back to you? Did you know that?
No, but what a wonderful little story.
That was, I had never watched Leave It to Beaver. It was before my time. And that was like, I remember when we watched the special in my grandmother's house, that was the rumor that went. And I couldn't confirm or deny because I didn't know who the hell Eddie Haskell was. So I grew up thinking that for a while.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Where does this story go? See, that's your problem. It doesn't go anywhere. You can't just tell about a memory.
Everything's
You
an
could
act.
ask people if they have a memory.
Hold on, pause 1 second. I'm
dead
sorry. He goes, they've never met before. And he goes, that's your problem. So again, he's stereotyping this radio guy,
Well, it's like everything's an act to him. Because he's like, why isn't this going anywhere? He's like, I'm just telling
you have something planned for me. Whereas like Mike Calta's just hanging out and trying to talk to the guy. Now, if you're listening at home and saying like, I don't give a fuck about Eddie Haskell or Leave It to Beaver, but it's Calta's way of introducing him to the show, kind of trying to find some sort of common ground. Because you could go, oh, really? I've never heard that. Why would that be? Or I got that a lot. Either way, even if you don't give a fuck, play along for more than 1 second. Yeah. Give the guy a fucking chance. But Gallagher does not do that.
No, he sucks. Rest in peace.
But I mean, where do we go with this now?
Well, why do we have to go somewhere? Why can't I just tell you something funny that happened in my life? Why are you being a dick right away?
Well, I don't know. But the Eddie,
wait, hold on, back it up. Why are you turning into a dick to me? I didn't do anything to you, and all of a sudden you come in here with an attitude.
I don't have an attitude.
You kind of a little bit.
All right, great.
Okay. All right, Gallagher, it was nice seeing you. Go smash your fruit in the hall.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, see you later. Good. Your tag's still on your hat, Mini Pearl.
I know.
You didn't leave anything here. All right. Yeah, get out, you dumb old dick.
So Calta was not having it. And I kind of respect him for just being like, you know what? Instead of having a 40-minute long contentious interview, just get out.
Just leave.
Just go. I don't need this. And I don't know much about Mike Calta, but like he's kind of the last radio guy. I think he lives very well and is has a little niche audience. Like he's the king of Tampa down there. So you certainly wouldn't know him nationally, but like he's got a set audience. He doesn't need Gallagher to boost his ratings or anything. I don't think.
No.
So it's weird when you're Gallagher and you come in. I can't even say come in like you're a superstar, because if he said that to Brad Pitt, Brad Pitt would give him more affability. You know what I mean? Like even the celebrity, the people that are above this wouldn't treat someone like that the second they walk in.
No
where
kidding.
they're like,
let the interview breathe for a minute. See if you guys get it's just or see where it's going before you say it's not going anywhere.
I think that entire clip, including Gallagher's plugs and like the preamble, and there's more after him walking out where Calta's talking to like his staff about it, because I guess Gallagher was kind of a dick in the hallway to the staff also.
Shocking.
The entire clip is like 7 minutes. So that tells you how quickly Gallagher was in that room.
Jesus.
So yeah, I mean, like he was a curmudgeon, but as I said, in many ways he had reason to be, because for a guy that was so popular, like I said, 14 cable specials, was selling out theaters, and people were constantly disrespecting this man. He became a punchline, which I can understand how that bitterness builds up.
No, he's a huge star, Mike. What was your favorite cable special of his?
I liked Stuck in the 60s.
What about
that's the one I remembered the title.
I was going to say, what's your second favorite one?
Fuck, I remember. I read the name of the first one, but I can't think of it.
They're huge hits. They get replayed all the time.
Well, that's neither here nor there.
Rest in peace.
People must have watched.
R.I.P. Champ.
But listen, the guy was very successful, and he also had a reason to be bitter because his act was stolen by his brother.
Stolen, quotation fingers.
I would say it definitely was stolen. But let's hear Gallagher explain. So if you're not aware, if you've ever heard the reference Gallagher 2, that's where this comes from. So I'll let Gallagher explain first before we get into it.
And that's to the number, not TOO.
Yes.
I had a lot of jokes that were good jokes, and my brother wanted some money, and it's the kind of thing where you say, why don't you just go and get some yourself? Yeah. But the real reason was I had an argument with my manager over the rights to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And we broke up, and he felt that I was too old, that I was now 24 to 36.
Oh my goodness.
My market and the real market is 18 to 24. And so he was going to go and get a kid that he knew, Scotty, who is Carrot Top.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to stop them from doing a splashing act in the smaller venues. So I sent my brother to do my act and to tell me what was going on at that level of show business, you see.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant. So now what happened? You created a monster and it became bigger than you could control?
I put him with Tom Sobel, who was...
I know who Tom Sobel is.
Isn't he great?
Yes.
And I trusted him to advertise correctly. Tom ran the Comedy Caravan in Louisville, Kentucky, and I trusted him to make sure that it was honest, that we always told the crowd that it was not Gallagher. But you could tell by the $12 ticket price, and I'm 22. I was 22. But then my brother wasn't easy to work with, and Tom's crew, the girls, didn't want to work with my brother anymore.
Right.
And they said, please get rid of him.
Now, listen, I'm sure this lady interviewing him annoyed me as much as she does you guys, but it was the most succinct telling I could find of this story.
I was the whole time I'm going, ugh. Yeah,
So,
wow, cool.
The lady annoyed me a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of get a synopsis. We have to listen to her once more, so hold on to your hats. But I just wanted a basic synopsis for what happened. So essentially, Gallagher 2 was doing, kind of cornball jokes and then smashing some shit at the end of the show. He also looked like Gallagher, at least enough so that, people were, particularly in the 90s, pre-internet, he could get away with people like, oh, okay, that's Gallagher. Did he, lose a little weight or gain a little weight, whatever? You couldn't really check. You're not on your smartphone. Like, that's not the fucking guy.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So it eventually came to an end when Gallagher had had enough of it, if we can hear that clip.
That's what happened to my brother Ron. When I let him perform my old jokes in small clubs, he thought that he was famous.
That was Gallagher too,
It went to his head. I couldn't stop. He went crazy. I told him, stop telling people that you're me because it's ruining my show. Because people think it's you and you're not that funny. Otherwise, you would have written I thought he'd write an act. I wrote a new hour every 6 months for 5 or 6 years. And he didn't write nothing. I came up with one joke, I think, about about the guy that killed his OJ. Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah,
It was OJ and Bart
So
Simpson.
he wrote a joke.
Yeah, he made one joke. I thought it was going to be like the Smothers, and we were both that we would share. That we would share or something. Oh, well, no good deed goes unpunished.
That's for sure. So when was the last time you spoke to your brother Ron?
In court.
I think we found a more hateable character than Gallagher.
Oh my God. Makes him look amazing.
But listen, I tried. I searched for other interviews where he's telling the story, but it's the best one I found.
Oh, man.
So Gallagher did win the lawsuit, by the way. Gallagher 2, Ron Gallagher, had to stop using Gallagher's license, had to stop using the Sledge-O-Matic Act, had to stop in any way suggesting that he was the comedian Gallagher.
What does he do now?
Ron Gallagher?
Yeah, is he still alive?
I don't know.
Tour dates just opened up, baby.
Oh, that's a good point. Although I guess the lawsuit would still hold up, I think. Well, who's going to sue him? I suppose. Maybe you're right. Yeah. Hopefully, look for Ron Gallagher at a theater near you, perhaps. But that is very shitty because not just that he stole his act, which that is taken very seriously in comedy sometimes, but he stole essentially stole money from his brother because he was stealing shows. He was going to clubs and venues and saying, I am Gallagher. I'm the guy that you're paying for. And that's not the case. And even if you want to say, if you want to say Gallagher's jokes were hacky or whatever, so who gives a fuck? Well, the guy, you know what I mean? And you would, you at your job, imagine whatever it is, even if you do a mediocre job, your brother is not allowed to come in and impersonate you, Correct. So it is a really shitty thing that happened to him.
Ron Gallagher, from what I'm finding, is alive, but a lot of Gallagher just died clips are coming up, so it's a still.
Yeah, it was weird. I wanted to find more about it. There's not a ton. I don't think Gallagher addressed it publicly a lot. There were, articles written up on it, but it's not much more in depth than what we talked about, unfortunately. So actually, I messaged with someone who may come on the show at some point, and one of the ideas they threw out was they said, have you done an episode about Gallagher versus Gallagher 2? And I said, that's a perfect idea. And this is right before Gallagher died, actually. But then as I looked into Gallagher 2, it's I don't even know if there would be a full episode there. It's the guy was kind of a scumbag and ripped off his brother. And then his brother sued him and won. So
Yeah, I mean, like him winning, that's a no-brainer, especially if he gave him permission and then he overstepped it, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, and I'm glad he did win because, as you no-brainer for like you or me speculating on it, but I think in court those things go a little off the wall sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Unless he was like billing himself as Gallagher too as a parody, he could probably got away with it, but he wasn't doing that.
Right? No, it was the exact same act.
Right.
So, listen. Maybe we're going to get flooded with messages from people saying, I actually got my medical information. Before Rogan, it was Gallagher. I really trusted this guy and thought he had a lot of, insight. And he really tickled my funny bone. If that's the case, I apologize. But that's the best synopsis of Gallagher's career I was able to do, certainly. But the guy was tremendously successful. And honestly, like if you think about it, one of the most successful comedians ever. I mean, not one of the top 10, certainly. But, if you're making a list of the top 200 as far as just pure success, Gallagher's certainly in there, I would think.
I would say, put it this way. If you hear the name Gallagher, you know who you're talking about.
You know who it is, yeah.
So
unfortunately, I kept searching for Gallagher, California governor race, and it appears there's a different Gallagher that has been running in California, so it really fucked me. But nonetheless, rest in peace, Gallagher. You certainly had an imprint on comedy. You are, like Craig said, the name Gallagher is synonymous with props and smashing fruit. Produce. It's not the legacy you wanted. We don't get to choose that in life, my friend.
Gallagher and produce go together like spaghetti and meatballs.
Right. Yeah. And listen.
Rest in peace.
I'm not above embarrassing myself.
Right.
And you can certainly criticize me. And there's plenty of access to reasons for criticizing me at blindmike.net. So if you want that, if you want revenge for Gallagher, and you say, let me find some clips of this asshole making a fool of himself, go to blindmike.net. Plenty of evidence there. You can find Apple, Spotify, YouTube. If you want to support the show for free, if you'd like to throw a little quiche behind us, we also have merch available. Why You Laughing merch, Gearhead merch, Blind Mike Project. And you can subscribe to the Patreon too. A bunch of stuff coming in the new year as far as Why You Laughing goes on the Patreon. So if that interests you, get subscribed. If not, we understand. And also go to verygoodshow.org. For Craig, I hear we were discussing before the show, some big things possibly happening there. Something I've never said this before about Very Good Show. Something I'm actually excited for is on the brink of happening.
We will see.
So we'll keep an eye out for that. Rest in peace, Gallagher. And until next time, that's not what I say here. I was going to say, go to the Patreon, folks, because I was going to say, until next time, keep making money, folks. Why Are You Laughing? Signing off. Goodbye.